Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stage Door Show. I'm Dave Hondel. Tonight, I'm honored to have my two guests. Both are longtime Hollywood filmmakers, actors, producers, and directors that have been through the unbelievable evolution over the last several years in entertainment. And they talk about their many stories on their amazing podcast called Party Nerds Podcast. I've listened to about half so far, and I'm absolutely obsessed with their show and their stories that they tell. So please welcome to the show, Richard Gabai and Robert Carradine. Thanks for being with me, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for having us. Nice to see you on this groovy day.
I really can't thank you guys enough for being on the show. Like I said, I was telling you before we started recording, I really listened to a lot of your shows. One thing that I really like about your show is, I grew up in the 80s. I graduated high school in 87, and, Revenge of the Nerds it's still on my top 5 comedy movies. I love that movie so much. And you're keeping the legacy alive of some of these guests that you have on the show. And, and that's one thing I really like, Ed Begley Jr. and like I said, Veronica Cartwright and some of these folks like David Zucker. I mean, I'm a huge Airplane fan as well. So I guess what inspired you to start this podcast? And it's just, like I said, very entertaining. So I'll start with you, Richard.
Oh, well, cool. And I guess it kind of would start with me because
it started with you.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, Maxwell Barrett, who knew that, I've known for 20 years. He was a PA on a film I produced, 20 years ago. And now he's a big time technical supervisor on huge reality shows like Lego Masters and Runway and all that stuff. He knew that Bobby and I are best buddies, which is a whole story in itself, which is an episode of the podcast on how it sort of came to be. So he knew that Bobby and I were great buddies. And, the irony that I started my career by ripping off Revenge of the Nerds when I made this knockoff called Assault of the Party Nerds that is not as important, but it is not unimportant. It has been released and re-released and re-released. So anyway, he said, you and Robert Carradine are great buddies. And this whole, we're living in the current day. We're both still working, but then there's also that nostalgia. So it was really his idea. He kind of had some equipment, and Bobby and I have pretty deep Rolodexes and some really nice friends. And that was kind of the impetus of it. And Bobby and I said, well, we're out of work that week. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. So we set up shop and we shot for a week, for 5 days. And it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose, the guests, I'm sure, had a good time as well. But, you guys, that's one of the things I like is the camaraderie of the show. And I like how you talk about different stories, but one story kind of leads to another story. It leads to another story. And, I remember, Robert, you telling several stories in a row of different things because it reminded you of some other things that had happened. And that's one of the other things I like about your show is that the stories just keep coming and coming. And, growing up in the 80s myself and some of these great movies, Virgin High, that 90s, and you're talking about Leslie Mann, some of the things that happened with her. But I really enjoy those stories, and it brings me back to when I was in my childhood and how I got interested in filmmaking because of those movies that were out during that time. And one of the things that the evolution I spoke about in the intro, one of the things I wanted to ask you both, and I'll start with you, Robert, on this one, is you've been through the evolution of entertainment in the past several decades, starting, in the 80s, through today. Back then there was like 3-4 networks on TV. And so people were well known because The Love Boat and some of these shows were on, on these networks. But now as we get to, there's hundreds of networks now, there's hundreds of streaming platforms. And so you almost have to have, as a consumer, you almost have to have a niche or something that you like, because I might be watching one show, but there's hundreds of other shows and I don't know who these people are. Not that they're not great actors or great, directors or writers, but it's like you got to pick your poison, so to speak. And so I see you smiling. So what are your thoughts on that evolution? And do you think it's a good thing? Because obviously people are working, but it's tough to kind of decide what you're going to watch as a consumer.
Well, back about, I guess, 1995, 6, somewhere right in there, I did one of those. What's the name of that cop show out of New York? They've got like 3 versions of it.
NCIS.
Oh yeah. No, Law and Order. I think you're talking about, right?
Law and Order. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a Law and Order, and I didn't think anything of it. It's just I did a Law and Order, and I got back home. We shot it in New York. I got back home. people are stopping me on the street. And it just was like, oh, wow, I guess people are watching TV. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, but that was in those days. And it was interesting you brought up Virgin High, but to pick up on that, like a movie like Virgin High, which was a little independent, teen comedy that, we made it for next to nothing. It got picked up by Columbia Pictures. It was on HBO. And when Virgin High was on HBO on a Friday night at 8 p.m., kind of everybody was watching it because there was only one premium movie channel. It was
Sure.
called HBO, and they had one channel.
Yeah.
Even with a movie like Virgin High, what teen VHS title that's now on television, I would go into bars in Hollywood and get recognized. You're that guy. I want to buy you a drink and da da da. But now you could be on the most important, greatest show ever made, and never get recognized because there's so much out there.
yeah, like you said, there's 100 channels. I mean, how are you going to stick out?
It was funny. Like whenever that was 15 years ago or whatever, Bruce Springsteen had that song 57 channels and nothing on. And at the time I was like, there's not 57 channels, it's only about 30. Now there's 5,700 channels, and there's YouTube, and there's your show, and there's our show on, right? It's infinite. It's
a lot of, I mean, it's saturated, obviously. I mean, like I said, it's good. I'm glad people are working because a lot of our listeners are independent artists and, singers, actors and things like that. So they're getting work. I mean, which is great. That's always a good thing, but another part of the evolution that I wanted to ask you guys about is, Hollywood, and you guys know more than I do. You grew up there, but Hollywood is, I mean, kind of changed. There's Atlanta now, and there was British Columbia, there was New Orleans, there was Wilmington, North Carolina. I mean, it kind of New Mexico. It kind of changes where some of the landscape is now kind of moving east a little bit in some of these productions. Not all of them, obviously. It's always going to be Hollywood, but what are your thoughts on that? And do we feel like Hollywood has changed in that respect, where people are kind of flocking more to the Atlantas and the places where these huge studios are opening up? And I think they're opening up another Netflix one, I want to say in Monmouth, New Jersey, where I'm close to. So what do you think of that? I mean, how does that evolution of the industry kind of changed for people like yourselves that are filmmakers? And is the work kind of start moving out east?
Well, we just had a thing go down in California where they increased the tax benefit to shoot here. It's
okay.
Keep Film in LA. And as he just so succinctly pointed out, there's ways to go yet.
Sure.
Yeah, the world is ever changing, and like we talk about this all the time, and the good news is now anyone could make a movie because of these, and
sure.
The bad news is now anyone can make a movie.
Right.
And the same thing with distribution. You can start your own show and you have worldwide distribution. Getting eyes on it is something else. But I mean, the whole evolution that's all been happening for 25 years, right? Starting in Canada, now Atlanta, and all that, and I think for us, I'm speaking as we've talked about this so many times, part of the romance of the business is gone because it's all over the place and because there's no secret codes and there's no secret words anymore because of these.
Yeah.
But, as artists and as business people, we just always have to evolve. It's always been a business of opportunity. Like I wouldn't have known what a podcast was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now here we are talking to you about something. And, for us, we kind of wanted to make like the Tonight Show. I'm Johnny Carson. He's Ed McMahon, if you remember that.
Yep, sure do.
I don't know if you've been watching the podcast or just listening to it, but we shot it like the Tonight Show. And so now we're hosting the Tonight Show. It's not on NBC, but
Are you shooting? Yeah, you shoot it in your living room. I mean, that's amazing. And, and that's what I like about your show as well. I typically listen to podcasts when I'm driving and whatnot, but I have seen your work too, and on screen, and it's very well done. And like I said, and I think you have Max in the background, who's running some of your clips that you show, which I think is kind of cool, that you do that just like a show. And that's what I enjoy about it. It's like it's watching a TV show. when I was young, my brother, there was a contest to be on the Joan Rivers show, but to be like actually, like somebody who interviews people. So we set up a desk, and we in the apartment set up a desk, and we had guests, and it was a big deal. We had intro music and the whole thing. So I think there's always kind of that glamour of doing a show like that, and now it's easier to do that. But one thing you mentioned on one of your shows, Richard, was about cleaning prints. About being a director, and you clean the film or prints, I guess, and now we've gotten almost to the point where it's almost all digital. And you can speak more than I can on that. But have we gone away from film completely? Is it mostly all digital because of the costs involved?
Just about everybody but Quentin Tarantino, I think, has gone away from film completely, but he finishes on digital.
Sure.
I haven't shot a movie on film since 2005.
Oh, wow.
Well, there's a Leonardo DiCaprio movie that just came out. It's shot on VistaVision, 70 millimeter VistaVision.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a luxury. It doesn't make any sense to shoot film. I mean,
yeah.
When I used to shoot, I started directing movies like, Virgin High or Party Nerds or any of even the early family films I did, Motocross Kids and all that. There was no even video assist.
Right. I
didn't see the footage until 3 days later. I didn't know that there was a hair in the gate until it was too late. I had to cut around it,
Yeah.
Couldn't afford it.
Everything was through the viewfinder, but
right. So, I'd be running around telling the cinematographer right here, and important shots I would look through the lens, but I mean, it wasn't so easy.
Right, exactly. And then Robert, during like the times of Revenge of the Nerds and movies like that. In fact, I even saw that you were in a episode of Bonanza, which, I mean, that is something that for me, I still watch, though I still watch TCM, and I watch, my wife and I watch those old, channels. I love watching stuff like that, to be honest, but I'm sure that the filmmaking back then compared to today, it's leaps and bounds. It wasn't probably easy doing that type of work, but as an actor, even in Revenge of the Nerds, I'm sure you're filming on, those big Panaflex cameras or whatever. So how was it, as an actor back then when you were getting started and, knowing like you're blocking and, did you have any producing or directing experience at that time that kind of help you, know where to, what a director is actually looking at, or did you just simply take direction from the director? What was your process back then?
Well, my first film was The Cowboys, and it was directed by Mark Rydell. And basically, it was look over there. Okay, roll. Action. I mean, I was learning as I went. I had no formal training in film acting, but I was paying attention to what was going on around me. And, watching John Wayne, of course, Roscoe Lee Brown, Bruce Dern. I mean, those guys were incredible, consummate pros. So through osmosis, that sunk in.
Yeah. And then Richard, being, all the movies you directed, did you ever direct someone who was really kind of a theater actor that was used to kind of, projecting to the seats, to the back row, every facial expression can be seen, it's HD, so everything's going to be seen. You have to be more subtle. Have you ever kind of struggled with that with anybody that I'm not going to say, call names out, but
thankfully I haven't.
Yeah.
The only thing I've struggled with HD is people's complexion, but that hasn't been, but it's certainly the truth that, a digital and in close up is certainly a different style of acting than being in the theater and projecting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the only one who's ever hammed it up too much in any of my movies are me and Bobby. We're tone ourselves down every now and then, but it's interesting also about the experience and how do you know what's going on set? And my kids grew up on sets.
Yeah.
And, when my son was like 8, I had him on set and I used to give him the little headphones so we could listen to what's going on. And of course we had monitors and everything. And I'm setting up a shot and working around and the lighting guys are working. And I walk back to the monitor and my 8-year-old points to the monitor. He says, "Dad, there's a flag in the shot."
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. Now that he's 19, he could probably direct circles around me.
He's probably going to take after Dad.
Well, yeah. Well, I hope he surpasses me, and that's not good for him. But I kind of got to learn as I went. Also, I mean, one of my first jobs was a beer commercial for Old Milwaukee Beer at Dodger Stadium before they could see the extras. And
yeah,
my job was one line, and they had me do 67 takes.
Oh my gosh.
what was going on. And the director finally took me aside. He says, "Don't worry, we're using the second take. I just have to fill the day." It's like, okay, so there's things you don't know about the business, right? They're spending $1
Yeah.
million on one day at Dodger Stadium, and
Yeah.
all the sponsors are there, and they're all sitting there watching everything. And they're only making 12 shots, and if they made 8 of them before lunch, they don't want to let everyone go home too early. It looks
Oh
like
my, yeah.
Speaking of that, on Lizzie McGuire, we had this one director, Savage Steve Holland, great guy. His goal was to try to get done by lunch, and he finally did it one day. He got everything shot by lunch. We all got home after lunch.
Oh wow, that's cool. And speaking of Lizzie McGuire, my son, when I told him who I was interviewing, and he right away, without even missing a beat, Lizzie McGuire. Well, I'm Revenge of the Nerds. I'm a huge fan, but Lizzie McGuire just shows you how what age of people kind of brings back certain memories, and that's one of the things I also wanted to ask you about legacy, because one of the things that we talk about on my show a lot is legacy, and what do you want your legacy to be, and the whole thing. And 50 years from now, are people going to know who we are? And a certain actor that you like, and so you see Comic Cons and people are there, and so for me, I like to preserve the legacy as much as I can on my show of people that I enjoyed watching from back when I grew up. But what are your thoughts on that, as far as legacy goes, and the importance of keeping the legacy of Hollywood folks alive? And, I guess, what is your thoughts on that? Because I have very strong opinion on preserving those legacies, but is that something you guys feel strongly about as well?
Well, it's interesting. Jump in anytime you want. But my main motivation for doing the Party Nerds podcast was that exactly.
Yeah.
I would, with Bobby, get all the Hollywood stories out that I knew, all the incredible things from, meeting Springsteen and meeting Tarantino, and all the different things and all the crazy stories that have happened. And also then get all of our friends documented.
Yeah.
So by the time the show is gone a year, I have another friend of mine just wrote an autobiography, a filmmaker who was on our show named Fred Ray, who's made really over 100 movies. He wrote an autobiography. I am too lazy to write an autobiography. And I would like, everything that I've been blessed to be involved with so far to be documented. I agree with you 100%. I mean, one of the big motivations for us doing this show, like, in coming shows, we want to have his daughter Ever on the show, who's a great actress, and his brother Keith, all of our friends and family, so that it's all there. And like what you're doing with your show to kind of help artists and give advice is same thing. I mean, I think people could maybe get a grain of good advice or inspiration from the amount of times we've been kicked in the face, yet continued on.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell you about this film I did with Lee Marvin called The Big Red One. Warner Brothers, an executive at Warner Brothers with Richard Schickel, the Time critic from Time magazine, they got together over lunch one day, and they were waxing rhapsodic about, wouldn't it be great to get that film back together the way Sam Fuller meant it to be? So they went through this whole process to get all this missing footage and put the film back together the way it was meant to be. And now it's called The Big Red One, The Reconstruction. So my current project is to try to get Warner Brothers to put that into streaming and take the version that's in streaming out, because this is a masterpiece now, and I'd really like to preserve the legacy of Sam Fuller by having that film available to people.
Right, absolutely. Richard, one of the things that I wanted to ask you also about the strike, has it improved for the indie filmmaker? Because what I understand is during the strike, there was a lot of indie filmmakers were able to do some work and get their stuff out. But has it kind of inspired other indie filmmakers, I guess, since then, to kind of empower them to get their story out there and not have to rely on a studio, I guess, to get signed and to get like a contract? They could do their own work, and like you said, with phones now, everybody can do their own movie. But have you seen kind of a shift to more indie work since the strike?
Well, I've pretty much only worked in the independent world. I acted in one studio film in the beginning of my career, a horror film called After Midnight, and I I produced a studio film called Supercross, where I was the movie I first met Bobby on, which was for Fox. So I haven't been blessed to work in the studio system much.
Yeah.
During the strike, there was very little going on because the strike was really Screen Actors Guild. So most actors weren't working and wouldn't take work. But yeah, everyone, I think there's no shortage of people making independent films. The challenge now is really how to monetize them. Throughout most of my career, even until about 5 years ago, I knew that if I made a certain kind of movie or if I had a certain level of actor in the film, that I was going to get enough distribution to at least break even and make a little bit of money, because I'm usually either working with private money or I have a deal with a TV channel to get the movie picked up when it's done. And now, at least for me, if someone said to me, here's $500,000, go make an independent movie. I would say that even if we did a great job and got some really cool talent and had a really good script, it is not at all a slam dunk that's going to be recouped.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing at $500,000 or $3 million. I mean, unless you have some kind of a deal in place, it's a challenge. But the great news is you can express yourself and you can release it worldwide all by yourself.
Yeah. Nowadays, especially.
But that whole thing about going viral is what I don't even know what that means. I mean,
me either.
I just don't know how it happens,
Yeah.
This interview is going to go viral.
Yeah.
And you'll have 90 million views in 3 days. I'll have 80 jillion views, if jillion is a number. I'm not sure if that's a number.
I think it is.
Yeah, jillion should be a number.
Yeah, it's right after trillion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always tell myself I should hire a high school kid to do my social media, because then I'll get more hits, because they know more how to do it than I do. So, but one of the other things I wanted to ask you about film festivals, because, obviously independent artists, a lot of them, will enter their film in film festivals. Now there's a lot of different film festivals around, but, but what are your thoughts on that, you guys? Because, I think some of these film festivals that used to be, for true independent filmmakers are kind of getting more commercialized, I guess, if that makes sense, where you almost have to have a name in order to get your film accepted. And do you find that to be true? Or do you think that the indie filmmaker, which we have a lot of people listening right now that are indie filmmakers, that they have a true shot at getting their film in one of the mid-sized to bigger film festivals?
It really depends on the quality of the film they made. If the film's good, they have a shot.
Yeah, if you make something, I always say, good ideas are cheap, good scripts are expensive. I can't tell you how many people have, and by the way, to your viewers and fans, anyone can message me on Facebook or on IG, and I read all the messages if you have questions or whatever, because I can't tell you how many people say, hey, I've got this great idea, and I've got to say, well, send me. Send me five, then send me a script, and either you never hear from them again or you get something, So if you make something great, it will get noticed. I think the rarest thing is good writing. The hardest thing to find is good writing. But, the festival thing, it is true, though. Places like Sundance, I mean, if you don't have the right publicist, if you don't create the buzz before, the festival used to create the buzz. Now you would maybe need a buzz to get into the festival.
Yeah.
But it's
about marketing yourself.
I produced a short that was in Sundance, 20 years ago. It was a whole different deal with my friend Larry Greenberg, and I made a picture called oh my gosh, Beautiful Boy, with Michael Sheen and Maria Bello, that was at TIFF at Toronto. And the director won a Discovery Award, and it was wonderful. But I think it's even, and my Call of the Wild, where we became acquainted. Exactly. I premiered Call of the Wild, my family 3D film, at the Santa Barbara Film Festival. We premiered the Western that you were in, that I directed, called Justice, at the Newport Beach Film Festival. But none of those, the Beautiful Boy at Toronto, we got our deal there. We had Michael Sheen and Maria Bello, and the director, Sean Koo, did a phenomenal job on the movie. But, and one thing I would caution independent filmmakers is that film festivals are also a business. And, there's a million, Santa Barbara Film Festival adjacent festivals that will take your, entrance fee and then charge you for the award you're going to win.
Oh, yeah.
He was even. I won an Emmy, thank God, for a TV show I produced called The Bay for a couple seasons.
That's amazing, amazing work.
I learned that you have to pay $700 for your own Emmy. So it's not just the film festivals that sometimes make you pay for rewards. The Emmy,
You gotta pay for your statue.
you got to pay for the statue, and you don't own it because they don't want you to be able to sell it if things got tough.
Oh
It's
my
owned.
gosh.
I'm allowed to leave it to my heirs, but it's owned by the TV Academy. But I
Wow.
would warn filmmakers about, going into 100 festivals and spending all those fees and,
Right, right.
getting a million certificates that don't mean anything. Although I also wouldn't discourage anybody from having a great time going to a film festival and seeing their movie with an audience because it's just the best.
Yeah, it is. It's really fun.
So
before
you
we
got to walk that line.
before we quit here, I just want to remind you that I have this story about the alligators on that movie in Florida.
Yeah, Brendan Rogers. Yeah, acquaintance of mine, and I had him on the show around the time that you actually filmed that. This was a while ago, but tell me that story because you said you had a great story about that.
All right, so they have this area there called the Alligator Farm outside of Orlando.
Yeah.
And there's a scene with the little girl, and the little girl is maybe, I don't know, eight or nine, something like that. I mean, she's a little girl. And there's like a plexiglass barrier between the pond where the alligators are and where the little girl is. They wanted to put the little girl on the alligator side of the plexiglass. And I was like, are you guys really okay with that? And they said, oh, we just fed them. It'll be fine.
It was fine, right?
Yeah.
After dinner snack. And then I want to ask you both separately, but Robert, we'll start with you. What's the one story, the one thing that makes you look back on your career and smile that you look back and really have fond memory of? I mean, is there one thing in particular?
Well, I have to say it's my first movie, The Cowboys. I'd been on a movie set for all of 5 days of my entire life. And I'm doing this scene with John Wayne. And it's me and the other cowboys. We're going to ride a bucking bronco. And if we could stay on the horse for, say, the count of 8, he'll consider us come hiring time. So I'm sitting on this fence and I'm watching the other kids ride the horse. And at some point, A. Martinez, the actor, rides in, gets on the horse, breaks the horse, makes it back up, go forward, spin circles, rides over and hands that horse to the next kid and goes, here you go, boy. Maybe you can ride him now. And that kid just gets totally livid, jumps off the fence. Well, I jump off the fence to protect the kid from A. Martinez. Duke Wayne breaks us up. He says, you, and he points right to me. He says, get back on that fence where you belong. Now, and he's about to continue the scene. He says, now. I said, well, wait a second, Mr. Wayne. I don't think you should tell me to get back on the fence where I belong. I'm the head kid. I think you just tell me to get back on the fence.
Yeah.
Okay, we're out on the plains. It's very noisy and windy. You could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a story.
That's a 17-year-old to do that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I was just trying to help out.
Yeah. What a story. Thank you for sharing that. Richard, how about you? What do you look back upon?
Well, my things are much more low level. I'll just, without naming names, I'll just say that there's no better feeling, very few better feelings. Of course, like the birth of your children, whatever, but when you said the question, something popped into my mind.
Sure.
And so to protect the guilty, I'll tell you that when you wrap a film, especially in my case, where I kind of wrote or co-wrote, directed, and starred in several of the movies. And the feeling you have at wrap when you're done, right? It's just like the biggest exhale, and even though I don't get stressed out making the films, I really don't. I'm just happy. He's been on sets with me. I don't get bent out of shape. And just that sense. And when you said that, it makes you smile. I just remembered this one particular wrap. And we had this 1960s Buick convertible, was a picture car that we were using in the movie. And I had my eye on this certain young lady who was working on the film the whole time. And I never, get involved with anyone during work. And wrap happened. And we all decided we were going to go to this all-night deli in Hollywood called Cantor's to get something to eat. And I looked at her and I said, do you want to ride with me? And that smile, And that moment in my life, leaving the set in this old Buick convertible, heading to the deli with my crew, with this beautiful doll next to me in Hollywood, when Hollywood, I know Hollywood is still great, like downtown Hollywood, like what I'm talking about, like, Melrose and Hollywood
Right.
Boulevard.
Sure.
When I was there in my 20s, it was paradise. And I hope it is for kids in their 20s now.
Yeah.
For me, it's like hell. Like I go there now.
Yeah.
To me, it's hell. But
Yeah.
that is just the biggest smile. Just
Yeah.
driving, turn on the radio, the top's down, you just wrapped a movie, and you're on your way. And that's just it's just the biggest smile. It's just the biggest.
Well, that's like an ending of a movie in itself. I mean, think about that. There you go. There's your next movie ending.
I feel very lucky to have lived those dreams.
Yeah, for sure.
It's still going, and it's still going. We're not done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope not. My last question, and start with you, Robert, on this one as well. But I always ask this question: when it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave behind to your fans and your family when it's all said and done? What do you want them to think of? Robert Carradine.
That I was a pro. Was on time. Virtually always knew my lines.
That's great.
But yeah, be a professional. I inherited that from my dad, John Carradine, and my brothers, David and Keith. They both have it. My daughter, Everett, she has it. My niece, Martha Plimpton, she has it. Carradines are pros.
Absolutely. And always have been. How about you, Richard?
Well, the Gabais do not have that same cinematic legacy, although my grandfather's first cousin, I learned way too late, was Adolf Zucker, who founded Paramount. So I never met them. So, but I would echo what Bobby said. I think Roy Orbison, they asked him how he'd like to be remembered, and he said, "Well, I'd like to be remembered."
Yeah.
And I would say that I would echo that. And I'm blessed to be married for 25 years so far to the mother of all three of my children, and I have no other children, and they're all wonderful, growing up to be wonderful, amazing adults. And in this business, it's even harder to stay married than in the real world.
Yeah.
And so I'm very grateful for that and proud of that. And I'm very proud and happy to know that all of my kids are close to each other, and that we have a close family. And I remain just forever grateful to the fans and friends that have allowed me to make a living.
Yeah.
So everyone just needs to know how grateful I am. And we're making more stuff that we hope you're going to watch.
Yeah, and I just want to add something. I'm grateful for the career that the fans have given me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, I'm one of those fans, and I can't thank you both enough for doing this and keep that legacy living for not only yourselves, but for the folks that you have on your show. And I'm going to keep listening, and you have a huge fan in me. And the Party Nerds Popcast is found on all streaming platforms. So make sure you check it out. Again, I'm going to get through all of these podcasts that you guys have and then some, whatever you have coming up next.
Okay.
So just again, thank you for the content you're putting out, and thank you for the honor of your time today. And always welcome back on my show anytime you guys want. So thank you again.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Good to meet you.